Hello, everybody. It's John Pollock and Phil Chertok, and welcome to our UFC 257 post show here at Post Wrestling. Hello, Phil.
Hi, John. It's great to talk to you. It's been a while.
It has been. You and I have had absolutely no interaction since October. I just went dark. I ghosted all of your texts, but I have come back. I'll come back for the big ones, I guess.
How irresponsible of you, John. But we're glad to have you back. Of course, we were glad to have Eric in place of you for the last couple shows. But of course, everyone in the post MMA community missed you very much. So we're glad to have you back, especially for such a big event.
Well, let's talk about this event. I thought going into this one, this felt like a massive pay-per-view, even by Conor McGregor standards. I would say that if you had asked me this afternoon, how well is this pay-per-view going to do? I would say I think this one's going to be through the roof. I would say that it's going to beat what Conor and Donald Cerrone did a year ago. And I guess the only hesitancy I would have to this being kind of that massive of a number is what seemed to be an enormous issue on ESPN Plus tonight, that it just seemed like they were given just this gigantic stream of people that were trying to buy this show. And it was like over an hour into the show, and it just seemed like nonstop complaints. And whether that's just a small section that flooded my timeline and it's not indicative of the larger picture. I mean, were you following any of this? Because it seemed like it was a disaster for those trying to buy on ESPN Plus.
We didn't. I wasn't following it directly. There was a member of the post community, Kevin, in the Discord chat who had mentioned that he was, or no, I think it was Kendall from Ohio, and he was saying that he was having trouble with ESPN Plus, and he was complaining. But eventually, he got in to the fights, before the main event, which was the big attraction. And before the co-main event, but nonetheless, a huge frustration. I mean, maybe it's a sign that it was just, gangbusters numbers. I don't know.
I'm sure this all happened, I imagine, with people that were buying the show right at 10 Eastern or right before. And I'm sure they were just inundated with orders. I'm sure that was the case, which would indicate enormous demand for the show. But at the same time, you have to wonder, is this going to affect any refunds or people that were leaving unsatisfied? Because it wasn't just, missing the first fight. It was, for some, they were by 11 p.m. they were still saying they couldn't get it. So I don't know how widespread it was.
You know what it was, John? It was all of those illegal streamers. They couldn't get their illegal streams because Dana had shut them down so effectively. So they were all rushing to ESPN Plus at the exact same moment.
Well, if I had to see that joke one more time that was made tonight, because that was everyone's go-to reference, was that Dana White went after the wrong streamer. They went after ESPN Plus by mistake.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry to be, predictable, redundant, all that.
No, you were not going that direction. I understood what you were saying, but worth noting that tonight was also the night that ESPN Plus was increasing the price of their pay-per-view up to $69.99.
Oh, that's a weird coincidence.
Amazing. Yeah. Conor fight. Let's jack up the price. And people, I'm sure, left just saying, this is great. What an awesome upgrade I got tonight.
Now,
although in Canada, they did not up the price. We stayed at, I paid $65 for this show tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, they don't. I guess they still partner with the pay-per-view companies here, right?
They get to, the pay-per-view providers can price it however they'd like. That was an ESPN Plus decision to increase it, but interesting to see that at least Rogers here in Canada did not follow suit. But going back to last year's card, Phil, Cerrone and McGregor did about 1.3 million buys, and I think since that time, since the beginning of the year to the end of the year, ESPN Plus increased by almost 4 million subscribers throughout the year. So, number one, do you see it eclipsing that 1.3 million figure? And what do you think is the ceiling for tonight's fight, throwing out all the potential technical issues that they would have had, just a pure number of orders that you think they would have hit tonight?
Okay, so I do think it's a bigger event for a bunch of reasons. First of all, just the main attraction of Conor versus Poirier is a bigger fight. Poirier is a former interim champion. He challenged Khabib in a massive pay-per-view event. Donald Cerrone was never as much of a star as Poirier is. And of course, he has that history with Conor. As well, as you mentioned, ESPN Plus has grown so much in the last year. Part of that is because of the launch of Disney Plus and the bundling of those services together. So you have more people who have access to these events. Part of it is this pandemic sort of pay-per-view UFC culture that has built up as well. I mean, they're overperforming during this time. So all of those things coming together, the time off for Conor was leading to a massive pay-per-view. Dana came out, said it was trending huge. It was going to do at least 1.5 is what he said, which makes me think it's, probably around 2 million buys. And if you ask me the upper limit, 2.2 maybe.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that would be an enormous figure if they would hit 2 million for this fight. I certainly see it eclipsing like 1.5, 1.6. Like this, I felt like this felt like a big fight, and you might be right. Like I don't know what the ceiling is when a big Conor fight hits in such a way, and I wouldn't say this is the biggest fight you could do with Conor, but certainly to compare to last year, I think this was significantly bigger than Donald Cerrone last year, and so is ESPN Plus. It's just servicing that many more people.
Absolutely.
Or maybe not tonight. We'll find out.
That's right.
Okay. The good and the bad of that. So let's get into it. UFC 257 tonight from Abu Dhabi, their third show in a week's time. Were you tuning in? Did you have it on split screen Wednesday morning, the inauguration and UFC fights on a Wednesday morning?
I didn't have the inauguration on at the time. I did have the UFC, and it wasn't. I kind of had like tuned out a lot of the politics stuff after the election had been sort of decided, just because it was such a roller coaster leading up to the election. And so I wasn't really competing for eyeballs. I mean, I checked it out afterwards, of course. But I was watching the UFC at that time. It was fun. It was a pretty good card. It was fun to have it. It was unusual. I mean, I wouldn't recommend them doing it all the time. Doesn't seem like a good idea for business, but it was a fun card.
So the main event, Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor, that's where we're going to start. It was an electric atmosphere as these two were coming out. What did you think about the inclusion of drones inside the arena tonight?
It wasn't impressive. It was not impressive. There's a way, like we were talking about, like the UFC included these 3D graphics in the intros as well, and they all looked like really like amateur hour, and it just. Like UFC does so much really well, but it feels like their television production just improves at a snail's
It's very
pace.
Static. Like they don't go kind of, especially if you're coming from a background of you watched all of those Pride cards or even the K1 events, even like the Ryzen cards on like New Year's Eve, like the difference of production. Like Dana has never been that one that wants to present the big over the top in-house experience that you may get at a major, like harkening back to the Pride days. Like that kind of production was not something that Dana has leaned on, and we kind of see them like sprinkle in these experiments from time to time, but it's certainly not what the UFC hangs its hat on these pay-per-views. It's what a pay-per-view tonight, if you were to watch tonight's pay-per-view and go back 10 years, there's probably not like a gigantic difference of the presentation beyond some upgrades of just basic technology over the past decade.
I totally agree. And I have to think that Dana has a massive hand in that, because he still approves all of the intro videos for packages for the show. And he kept Face the Pain around for as long as possible because it was
Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah. So, I mean, and still Bob O'Reilly. There's some, he believes in a certain formula, and that produces results. And to a large degree, he's right. But I think he could loosen the strings on some of these things,
So that's the whole backdrop. The drones, the graphics for Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor. Over 6 years since their last fight at UFC 178. Completely different time for both of these men's careers when they fought at featherweight, and Conor McGregor finished him off in the first round of that fight, which was not even the main event of that pay-per-view. But this time around, much different set of circumstances, and the fight began. I was surprised by this. It was, if you were going to lay out a game plan for Dustin Poirier, it made perfect sense, but I was very surprised he went for a takedown as early as he did. And I think it surprised McGregor that, yes, it's in Dustin's strategy to try and throw in a takedown early. Were you surprised that we saw the wrestling of Dustin Poirier immediately? This was in about a minute into the fight.
It didn't surprise me because I thought that path to victory for Poirier would be to win in later rounds, wear Conor out, and then take over in the championship rounds. This is something that Poirier has done throughout his career against several opponents, and so I thought he was going to lean on that. And so going to the wrestling, leaning on Conor a little bit, even though that's not his bread and butter, he just didn't want to be standing in front of Conor early, eating that power. So it didn't surprise me so much that he went to the wrestling, but it did surprise me at how good of a takedown he was able to secure. Conor did get up, but I was pretty impressed with the wrestling.
McGregor was able to get up to his feet. Poirier couldn't really do much with the takedown, but it was a statement nonetheless. And he gets up, and then we saw Conor start to introduce his shoulder strikes, and Dustin was responding with his own. He got reversed on the fence by Conor, more shoulder strikes, and they're getting very animated, just going back and forth, talking to one another. And then Conor landed with a left hand in the center and rocked Poirier with this right hand. And Poirier starts firing back, and we start to see his calf kicks, and that's when the round ends. I thought this went pretty much according, if you were going to lay out how this first round was going to go, I wasn't expecting the takedown, but Conor was starting to get very precise with his strikes, and I thought this was a strong round for Conor McGregor, and I thought that this was going to be the tide of the fight. I was significantly wrong by the second round, but in the first, you had to be pretty confident in Conor McGregor that, I mean, he landed a really significant right hand on Dustin Poirier. And I was just thinking, man, I don't care how much Dustin Poirier could eat against Dan Hooker. There are only so many of those Dustin can digest.
Yeah, the shots were super clean, and they were clearly having an effect on Dustin. There was a couple moments towards the end of the first round, though, when Conor threw his lead uppercut, his right uppercut, and Dustin countered with two hooks on both instances, and you could tell that that was something that they scouted. And then even after that, Conor threw his left hand, and Dustin slipped it really nicely. So even by the end of the first round, even though I definitely gave it to Conor and he was in control of most of it, you could see little bits of progress for Poirier.
It was almost as though Dustin knew he was going to eat some of those strikes, especially early in the fight, and that he did not panic, and he seemed to have a game plan and kind of just up the intensity. And a credit to the commentary team tonight, which was John Anik, Daniel Cormier, and Paul Felder. Like they zeroed in on those calf kicks instantly that Conor was not checking, and they proved to be very significant by the second round, because that's how the round begins, where McGregor is not checking these kicks, and you can see his leg has been damaged. And this is at a point where I would say Poirier had landed about 11 of them, but they had been very significant. And again, McGregor was not checking them, and Poirier was also getting very much in Conor's face. Like when he was succeeding, he was almost like lending from Nate Diaz's playbook of like really giving it to Conor, and Poirier just starts going from the leg, and then suddenly he's throwing his hands, and there is a right hand that continues to land on Conor, and he is just like a sitting duck here against the cage because Poirier is landing clean strikes. And there is one shot that you can see is the difference maker where McGregor is stunned, and he gets rocked with another shot that sends him down by the fence, and he's finished with strikes at 2:32 of the second round. Dustin Poirier, your winner by TKO.
Yeah, incredible performance by Poirier. Very surprising to a lot of people, the odds makers. Surprising to myself, and surprising not because I didn't think that Poirier had a way to win, but not the way that I would envision that he would get the win. Yeah, the calf kick. Conor just did not respect it. And then he paid for it. It was kind of funny. You saw a shot like that in the co-main event that sort of wobbled Michael Chandler, who had a history of taking that calf kick. And it's always, the broadcast actually opened up with Cormier saying, guys, fans at home, we know you're tired of hearing about us talk about the importance of this calf kick, but until people start checking it, it's going to be, a big deal. So, even Cormier was foreshadowing what was to happen later in the night. It looked like he didn't respect it, and then one of those shots really numbed it, and he couldn't stand on it, couldn't fire back, couldn't defend, and it was over.
It was an incredible win for Dustin Poirier. He withstood the storm in the first round, and if you're looking at how important these two lightweight fights were to start the year off for the UFC, I mean, this definitely throws a big wrench into your plans because, I mean, Dustin Poirier was one that, yes, you could see a path for victory, to victory in this fight, but I was like you. I thought if that was going to happen, it was going to be McGregor just expending too much energy in the first 2 or 3 rounds and being a sitting duck for him in those championship rounds. But this was an elite performance from Dustin Poirier. And you have to imagine that this guy will be fighting for that lightweight championship next, depending on where things fall in this lightweight division. It's still a case of kind of musical chairs with this lightweight division, but it's probably not the scenario everyone imagined tonight, that it would be Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler as the two that would be standing tall, both like sizable, well, at least for Poirier, a sizable underdog going into the fight on Saturday.
Yeah. In some ways, if you could think, oh, for Dana, this is a disaster, right? Now there's no Conor versus Khabib fight, but Conor's still going to make money. He still wants to fight. And now Poirier is a big star, and his next fight is going to draw a lot more attention than any of his previous fights other than the Khabib one. So I think
but what is that fight with Conor McGregor that you followed this with? That is going to entice Conor as well.
Well, I think Conor isn't enticed by competition. Like, he's willing to fight Diego Sanchez. That fight doesn't make any sense, but in his mind, it makes sense because it's Tuesday or whatever. So I think for Conor, it's not going to be so hard to motivate him. The problem with Conor is every Conor fight is such a big deal. You need so much hype and promotion for it. I bet he would love to take a short notice fight in some ways, avoid a lot of the hoopla surrounding the big event and just focus on fighting. I mean, that's unlikely, of course, but the fight, I like the idea of Paul Felder. It's a good style matchup, Irish Dragon versus, the Irishman. I think that would be really exciting for the fans, and why not?
I think it depends. If it's the Conor McGregor that has been talking in the lead up to this fight that I want to stay busy and I just want to just fight the best guys here. I mean, that's one thing. The idea of Conor going from a main event level fight and looking at the hopes of fighting Nurmagomedov again, and then suddenly you're looking at a Paul Felder or a Charles Oliveira or a Dan Hooker. There's still the part of me that I look at this guy in Conor McGregor and how attractive that Manny Pacquiao fight is to him because of the amount that's on the table and the spectacle that fight will bring versus fighting a Charles Oliveira, for instance. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe he's going to just jump right back into things. But with Conor, I don't think you can ever just sit back and predict what is the most likely outcome, because he'll throw you a curveball, and how is he going to react to this loss where he is out of that lightweight title picture that he came back for?
So I agree with you. A lot of people are talking about him doing the Manny Pacquiao fight this year. I'm like, look, he's more likely to do the Manny fight if he loses this fight than anything, because it takes the luster off of any big MMA fights, but it also takes the luster off of a potential Manny fight too. Like he can't beat a top MMA guy in a striking match. So now he's going to go into boxing and beat one of the all-time greats. So who's going to pay for that? So like, I'm sure somebody will pay him for that, but I'm not sure that there's going to be a big audience for that event.
Won't be Floyd level, but Phil, it would be big.
I don't think it would be big. I don't think it would be as big as anything he does in MMA. The UFC marketing machine can do better than a Manny Pacquiao fight, in my opinion.
You think Conor and Paul Felder would outdo him and Manny Pacquiao?
Conor and Donald Cerrone did 1.3 million, and I don't think that Conor and Manny Pacquiao does as much as that.
I would 100% believe that a Manny Pacquiao fight with Conor would easily top 2 million buys.
What's the last Manny Pacquiao fight that drew anything to anybody? Nobody. Like he's an international star. It would draw big ratings all across the world. I'm not saying people wouldn't watch it. I just don't see it being a big $60 or $70 pay-per-view attraction in North America. Not massive. Not as massive as a Conor UFC fight. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time.
The other side of the equation is Dustin Poirier, and if we throw Nurmagomedov out of the mix, is this as like it's an interesting picture you have, because like Charles Oliveira is kind of in waiting, and then you have Michael Chandler, who had an incredible performance that we'll get to next. But I think the constant is Dustin Poirier fighting for this championship next. It's just a question of who that is.
Yeah. I think it should be Charles Oliveira. I mean, yes, too. I mean, Dan Hooker is a great fighter, but he did lose to Poirier. So, this win over Chandler coming in, getting this win, it's a big win. It was a big statement, but it is just one win. It's a really exciting win on a massive card. So it wouldn't surprise me to see the UFC vault him in there. It kind of makes sense to put the two guys who are on the same card in the next main event. But Charles Oliveira, he's really earned a title shot. He's done so much, not just his win streak, but the fact that he's the all-time submission leader. There's a lot going for him.
I really like Poirier and Oliveira, and I would even, aim for either in that proximity or even on that same card that you do Chandler and Justin Gaethje, and you have your lightweight picture set, and then in the background you do have Conor McGregor if he's going to do something. Like, listen, Conor McGregor is going to have the shortest path of anybody. He gets one win, he will be thrust right into whatever the title picture is. It's ultimately going to come down to his willingness to fight and when and who. But in terms of the non-Conor options, like I really like those pairings coming out of tonight.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Like it is a good thing that Michael Chandler came into the UFC and made a statement. I mean, what a statement. I mean, we haven't really talked about that fight yet, and we're about to. But so often we've been disappointed by people's first time in the UFC, and it was really refreshing to see somebody so prepared for that moment.
Yeah, so Chandler and Dan Hooker was second from the top here, and the fight began, and Chandler was just stalking Hooker, and then he threw these like front kicks right at Hooker, and Hooker's circling away, and Chandler's peppering the body, and then it's a left hook that drops Hooker after he takes a right to the body, and Hooker's down, and Chandler just pounces on top of him. You'd think that he's going to go for a guillotine, but instead he just goes back to the striking and finishes Dan Hooker at 2 minutes, 30 seconds of the first round. You couldn't ask for a greater debut to just be a spectacular introduction of Michael Chandler, who was introduced as the former Bellator lightweight champion during Bruce Buffer's introduction.
Bjorn Rebney can die in peace. He's finally made it.
Chandler sent by Rebney. I was waiting for a Mexico tweet from Bjorn tonight, but it did not happen. But Chandler has gone on the mic, cut a promo on McGregor, Poirier, Nurmagomedov, just went
Did he
through his
really?
whole.
He didn't really cut a promo on Nurmagomedov. He cut a promo on all those other people. He kind of said, "I'm gonna beat Conor. I'll beat Poirier, Habib. You come back, you can beat me because you're the best. But I still want to fight you." That was sort of the tone of the thing. But
Well, you'll beat me if you can. So I mean, this guy was just laying out his. He's like, "Listen, I'm 34. I got to get these fights in quick. So everybody, I'm down. 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I can come back in 2 months." So this was a spectacular debut for him. And I would say that, yes, there was a lot riding for McGregor and Poirier and Hooker. But to me, Michael Chandler at 34 years old, and that was a concerning number, he comes in and loses. We just listed off how deep this lightweight mix is at the top. He falls behind all of those guys with a loss. And conversely, a win, he's up in that mix. It would not shock me, like if negotiations with Oliveira hit some kind of snag and they need a different option to go, Chandler could be fighting for the title next. That's not out of the realm of possibility. So this win was massive for Michael Chandler.
If you ask me who's more likely, Oliveira or Chandler, I think Chandler's more likely because of this exposure. Like Oliveira had that win over Tony Ferguson, but that was on a pay-per-view that didn't draw nearly as much as this. And just the style of the victory, the flip afterwards, the post, I jokingly, facetiously mocked the post-fight interview, but it was great. Like it was so much enthusiasm, and I think people are going to want to see him again. So if they do, I'm leaning that they're going to do Chandler over Oliveira.
I would like to see the Oliveira fight, but I'm with you. Like Chandler, they could do that. And a Poirier-Chandler fight, absolutely no one is going to be upset with that option if they go that way, except for Charles Oliveira.
Yeah.
So this was fantastic for him. So comes in Dan Hooker, a tough loss for him after the loss to Dustin Poirier last June. So that's going to take him several steps back in this lightweight division.
Yeah, Dan Hooker, very tough loss. He's such an exciting fighter. His losses up to this point, even though he did get finished before, they were competitive fights for a while. This one, he got starched pretty quickly. So, maybe take some time off, back to the drawing board. And there's still lots of exciting fights for him. And I think there's still opportunity for him to get back to the top of the division. In terms of options out there, I mean, maybe Conor McGregor's a good option, right? I mean, it seems like he probably can't turn it around as quickly as Conor, though.
Jessica Ai versus Joanne Calderwood at 125 pounds. They went 3 rounds, and they were talking about how these two do not get along with one another. Joanne Calderwood looks at Jessica Ai as a schoolyard bully. Well, the bully dropped the decision here to Joanne Calderwood. The story of this fight was, Jessica Ai was trying to clinch with her, but couldn't find much success with it. And it was Joanne Calderwood fighting at distance and just attacking her from the outside. The first round was relatively close. And the second round, this was more so Calderwood's round. She hit a front kick to the face, and Ai's face was starting to swell. And then clinches or knees from the clinch, and just on any breaks, landing these kicks. And then Jessica Ai got a takedown in the final minute, but didn't do much with it. And the third round, it was Ai just going for the clinch again against the fence until Keith Peterson separated them. And then Calderwood went back to her strategy, attacking her, and had, I thought, a strong second half of that last round. I had her winning each round, and the judges had it 30-27 twice, 29-28. Joanne Calderwood victorious.
Yeah, a pretty exciting fight, more exciting than a lot of us anticipated. Very busy, active. I did give Jessica Ai the first round. She had a couple of flurries to the body that I thought seemed pretty effective. Turns out they didn't do too much. Calderwood kept an amazing pace throughout the fight, had a lot of variety to her attacks, elbows, knees, in the clinch. She was really good at defending her position. She was great on the outside. She was really good at landing strikes on the break, as the commentators noted multiple times. Pretty fun fight, but tough division and tough to see tough to see Joanna as a title challenger, even though she's been in that place before and missed that opportunity. It's just really hard to see anybody challenging Valentina.
No, it's not the kind of performance that you're watching and saying, wow, Joanne Calderwood could really give Valentina Shevchenko a run for her money. She was next in line for the title fight. They brought this up during the fight, but then she decided to take the fight with Jennifer Maia, and Maia got the upset and got the title fight as a result from that. So when Shevchenko's ready to fight again, like, your options, I guess Calderwood, this win at least gets her back into that conversation. You have Jessica Andrade now in the weight class, and Lauren Murphy, who's won her last 4. Those are some of your options, but none of those challengers to me jump out as, great opposition for Valentina Shevchenko. It's just whoever Shevchenko is going to fight next.
Yeah, I mean, of all of them, I guess if you're the UFC, Andrade is the one who has, sort of like a history. But Lauren Murphy does have a win streak. She's put together. She's shown, some significant improvements. So she kind of deserves it in a lot of ways. So, I'm all for people who deserve it getting it, even if, the likelihood of success is slim.
That'll be the next pay-per-view. It'll be like Shevchenko versus Calderwood. That'll be the tagline. Andrew Sanchez versus Mahmoud Muradov. This was at 185 pounds. Muradov, who ended up getting a performance of the night bonus for this. It was a decent fight from Andrew Sanchez, but I think he just got overwhelmed at times from the striking of Muradov. He was throwing these big overhand rights early on. Into the second, Sanchez was starting to get a bit of a better game plan together, was getting his timing, but it was a very strong end to the round for Muradov, and they continued into the third. Sanchez landed, but then got rocked with a right hand and then ate a flying knee and this huge flurry, and Mahmoud Muradov finished him at 2:59 of the third round. So a decisive win for Muradov here, who is 2-0 in the UFC, now improves to 3-0 after wins against Trevor Smith and Alessio Di Chirico.
Yeah, not a deep list of names that fans would recognize, but Muradov definitely has skills despite that, and you could see that in this fight. He took over with a variety of attacks. He was able to mix things up a lot. He kind of went away from some of the things that were working early, but went back to them towards the end, and ultimately got the finish. I was pretty impressed with him. I thought he looked really polished.
He did. He looked very good in this fight and had a strong end to the fight at the end. I think really punctuated it rather than just riding out the decision. So very good striking from him. And Andrew Sanchez is not a pushover either. So decent fight. And this was originally going to be on the early prelims. And then when the card shuffling occurred, they ended up on the pay-per-view, which doesn't sound like a big difference. But in Abu Dhabi, these guys would have been fighting at between 5 and 6 in the morning local time. And instead they got to fight on the pay-per-view, which to me is a bit of a gain if you're fighting at, say, 9 a.m. instead of 5:30 a.m.
I would just say, just being on the pay-per-view portion, having the opportunity to say, I'm on the same pay-per-view as Conor McGregor, that's, a lot more eyeballs that are going to see you than when you're on the Fight Pass prelims or wherever.
I don't know if they processed any orders by this fight, though, so maybe no one saw it. We might have been the only ones.
Fair enough.
This may be breaking news to every American listener we have. And the pay-per-view opened up. Guaranteed no one saw this one if it was the opener on the pay-per-view. Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Ribas. And this was an interesting fight on paper coming in the strawweight division. Ribas had been 4-0 in the UFC since coming in and had that big performance against Paige Van Zandt, where that was Paige Van Zandt's severance package for her. The final fight on her contract was sending her to the Wolves. That was Amanda Ribas at UFC 251. Marina Rodriguez, on the other hand, she has been, if you look at her record, she has fought, let me just pull up some of the fights that she has had since coming into the UFC. Okay, so she comes in to this division. Right off the bat, she gets Randa Marcos, followed by Jessica Aguilar, Tisha Torres, Cynthia Calvillo, and Carla Esparza before Amanda Ribas. Like, that is just an insane level of talent that you're fighting. Like, there are no gimmies that this woman got.
Absolutely. And, I'll be first to say I was writing her off in this fight. I did not have the confidence.
I underestimated her too. I thought Ribas was going to have very little problems with her. I was completely wrong.
Well, I knew she was a good striker and was probably better, but I was convinced, clearly falsely, that Ribas, like, that she had no ground game and Ribas was just going to have her way with her. And it kind of looked a little bit like it was going to go that way, but in the first round, when Ribas did get her on her back, Rodriguez was still able to control her position and posture and didn't take any damage, and nothing really came of it. So her grappling was better than I anticipated. And then in the second round, no need for any grappling. She just cemented the win emphatically.
No, that was it. Like, Ribas won the first round. She got the body lock takedown and kind of rode in her guard for that round. And then in the second, it was a very bizarre finish because Rodriguez stunned Ribas on her feet and continued with strikes. And it looked like Herb Dean was about to stop it. And he stepped in, but he never put his hands on them to summon that the fight was over. But Rodriguez assumed it was over. So she's walking away. And there was this moment of confusion that the fight was still going on. And both fighters had to realize this. And to the credit of Rodriguez, she wasn't thrown by this. She just picked up where she left off and drilled Ribas with a right elbow and connected with two big right hands. And Ribas was done on her feet. And it came at 54 seconds of the second round. Marina Rodriguez improves in the UFC. A very significant win for her in the UFC strawweight division.
Yeah, a massive win over somebody that the UFC had obviously invested a lot in, and on a massive card and in a exciting fashion. So I think people are going to be really eager to see Rodriguez get back in there in a high-profile fight.
And we'll quickly go through the undercard fights, at least the televised undercard fights.
Oh, really? We should, John, because we do have quite a few people waiting in the chat to call in and talk about. I'm sure they want to talk about Nick Lenz. So we'll.
You know what? Let's open it up to calls first, and then we'll go through the undercard at the end.
All right.
I imagine most people want to talk about the main card.
Sure. So,
but you're free to chat about Arman Tsarukyan as well, if you care to. You're welcome to chat about any of the fights we haven't talked about.
Well, I mean, Tsarukyan's pretty amazing, so I have no problem.
He had a very good performance, yes.
But we've actually got Mike from Blockbuster on the line. Mike, if you want to make sure that you're not muted, how are you doing, Mike?
Holy shit! You guys picked me first.
Well, you've been waiting, Mike.
We did. Hopefully we didn't make a bad decision.
No, that's totally fine. I actually took notes from the page of the John Pollock Notebook of MMA. So I would like to point out, first of all, in the production-wise, you guys were talking about how kind of awkward it is. And I would like to point out the only thing that ESPN did good in the production was having Ron Perlman narrate these things. It's just like his voice is enough where he brings seriousness to this thing, but you understand it's fighting and it's just kind of silly because it's dudes punching each other in the face and it's worth it.
Mike, can I say these should get your voice to do these things? You sound spectacular.
It's the Blue Yeti mic, unfortunately without a screen that I see that Pollock has, but it's the nice microphone that does it for me.
Great.
What else are in your notes?
I would like to point out Phil Chertok statistics. So he was talking about how draws for Conor McGregor, and McGregor's biggest draw was 1.3 million pay-per-view buys, with the Conor McGregor and the Conor McGregor and Mayweather fight being 4.3 pay-per-view million buys, and the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight being 4.6 million pay-per-view buys. So like the idea that McGregor shouldn't box these dudes for the check is just absurd to me. The idea that he could probably pull 3 million pay-per-view buys just doing a fake boxing match for 5 rounds with either of these guys, again, whether it's a rematch with Mayweather or it's a Pacquiao fight. It would be good either way, and everybody would eat it up.
I think you underestimate how important Mayweather is to the equation there. I just don't. I think it's Mayweather versus Pacquiao was something that people were anticipating forever, and then Conor McGregor versus Mayweather was a spectacle. I just, there's no intrigue around the Manny fight. Again, I'm not saying it's not going to draw something. I'm not going to say people aren't going to pay for it. I just don't see it having the competitive intrigue that a Conor McGregor UFC fight is going to have. And so, again, I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time, but I don't know. I'm having a really tough time seeing it.
But if you're talking competitively, like I'm with you. That's like, I am not interested in this fight in any kind of competitive sense, nor was I for the Mayweather fight. And I think that it's still going to be that curiosity factor that is still going to draw people in, and it's going to have an unbelievable amount of promotion behind it. And let's not forget the fact that Conor has fights left on his UFC deal, and ultimately this would have to be the UFC once again getting on board. And I think they are going to be very aggressive in trying to just keep, like, that is very evident in all of Dana's interviews of keeping this guy in the UFC and not putting him out there to do another fight with a boxer. So it's a much more complicated path, but Conor has looked at the most complicated plans and gone down those roads in the past. So I don't throw it out as something he would at least push for.
All right. Mike, do you have anything else that you want to add?
I just want to add 2 what I call 15 out of 10 surprises on this pay-per-view. Michael Chandler knocking dude out obviously is amazing, but I think Julianna Peña getting the submission win is something that's very important in that division, and I think she's just going to continue to climb her way up and look for her to get some good title fights maybe, or a good main event on a fight night, and look for her to continue to choke people out or continue to put arm bars on chicks.
Yeah, we'll be getting to that fight. It's, as we've talked about, like, they are very desperate for contenders at 135 pounds, and Julianna Peña is certainly in that mix, as they are, and had the right interview afterwards to direct everyone's attention to wanting that fight, because, like, she came in ranked 7th, but she's gonna, I think she has as much a chance as anybody to get that next fight with Amanda Nunes. So we'll go over that fight afterwards. But yes, she had a very, very strong performance after losing the first round to Sara McMann.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike. Thanks for your call. Next up, we have got, let me just unmute. Oops. And we've got Jason Hagholm is here. Jason, how are you?
I am doing well.
What do you think about the card tonight?
Oh, sorry about that. Just getting used to this. Honestly, this card was like the first couple fights in the pay-per-view or whatever, but for a card built on the co-main and main event, they delivered and then some. Like, Dustin Poirier solidifies himself as arguably one of the guys and gets the fight victory that he needed more than anything, because I always felt if he didn't get this victory, he'd always just be the bridesmaid, never a bride in the UFC. But Chandler coming in, wrecking shop, like, with a debut that's up there with the Anderson Silva levels of debuts in the UFC, I thought was very impressive. And just that division just goes, how deep it is. And, Poirier and Chandler maybe down the line is going to be an interesting fight. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on some of these post-fight comments from Dana. He seemed kind of upset at maybe the new plans for the new administration that's in, with a potential 14-day quarantine, which I guess does kind of mess up their business. But did seem like Dana has finally come to the agreement that Khabib's not coming back.
Oh, because we've been doing this show, so I haven't heard any of it. But that was the sense. He was pretty resigned to the fact that Nurmagomedov is not fighting again.
Yeah, I guess Khabib told him that, Dana, be honest with yourself. I'm more talented than these guys, and there's no point in me really needing to come back and fight any of them. So, I mean, it's good, I guess, that they've come to that realization, because Conor losing kind of kills any momentum of Khabib even coming back for a huge payday. And yeah, as you guys have been doing the show, Dana said that this is trending to be either the second or third biggest show they've ever done.
Well, that's an extraordinary number if you're talking about that. I mean, it's not one that you would assume was going to hit McGregor and Nurmagomedov levels, but if it finishes, in top 2, top 3, that's a phenomenal success for this fight. But you're right, if you were someone that was clinging to the idea, and mainly this was Dana, to the McGregor Nurmagomedov rematch, like that pretty much went up in smoke tonight. Like I think tonight really did confirm that there's no need for Nurmagomedov to come back unless there was something really pressing with him to come back. And I don't think that exists. And I think he was pretty, if you were reading the tea leaves this week, I mean, that definitely seemed to be the sense of, how that meeting went down from Nurmagomedov's side.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I never saw the reason for it, and then them really pushing that clip from looking for a fight, like, see these numbers trending, Khabib, and just Khabib's look, like, he was just not interested in it at all. I don't need to see it, but all in all, yeah, I thought, the co-main and main delivered through. I mean, for a night where it kind of UFC fell on their face with, especially the issues from ESPN Plus, I think all in all, once people were able to get through, this card did deliver in the aspects and maybe make you feel better for having to buy it twice.
So what do you feel will be the lightweight title fight coming out of this? What is the fight you would like to see for the vacant championship if this is the next step to vacate the title?
I think you got to go with, Dustin definitely has to be in the mix. I mean, Chandler as well, but it depends what happens with like Gaethje, because Gaethje, I mean, he's just on the doorstep. Does he get a win back? Come in there, because like a Gaethje Chandler fight would be also up there as an explosive, amazing fight. But that's kind of where I'm going. Something involving Poirier, because tonight was Poirier's night, and it has to be him fighting for the title. Like even though he felt this was his title fight, beating Conor McGregor, and that's what he said afterwards. But I think it has to be Dustin Poirier, and I couldn't be more happy for Poirier as well. Like, this is a guy that's done everything the right way, finally gets the win that he needs, and looked great in doing it.
Certainly a very easy fighter to get behind and feel good for as well, and to see like the remarkable. When you look back at the last fight and then going to lightweight and being on this tear, and even after the Nurmagomedov loss, thinking that would be the high point of this guy's career, was getting to the title fight and, rebounding. And it looks like he will fight for that championship again next. So it's quite the story for him.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the show. It did deliver with the co-main and main, and UFC's back at it in 2 weeks' time, as they have that week off next week.
Yes. Well, thanks a lot for the call, Jason. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All righty. Okay, so next up, we have got... How what am I going to pronounce it? Stepite. You are on the air, Stepite. How are you?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Did Phil butcher your name?
Not at all. That's perfect.
Damn, nailed it.
For once, I got a name right on this show.
Oh no, it was excellent.
What were your thoughts on the show tonight?
You know what? I was just genuinely surprised by the co-main event and the main event. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I really thought that Conor was going to be able to outstrike him early, and then with Chandler, when they faced off, I was like, this dude is so much shorter than this other dude. Like, it was baffling, and yet, the underdogs came through.
It just seemed like Dan Hooker never got started in this fight. It seemed like he was put on the back foot immediately by Chandler, and it was almost like in real time he was adjusting on the fly. And Michael Chandler, when he started going to the body, it seemed like this was just, the prelude to what happened. Like, it just seemed like Dan Hooker, whatever his plan was, he couldn't even get it out of the gate, and it was I was with you. I was definitely surprised by that outcome. Like I thought that fight was a lot harder to predict than the main event, but I mean I was wrong on both fights. I was leaning Hooker, and I was definitely thinking that McGregor would win the main event.
Yeah, I was even reading that first round of the co-main event quite wrong, because I thought that Hooker was actually like using his length. I thought he seemed so patient and that he was going to eventually like catch him with something. Didn't happen. But what was interesting in the second round of the main event, I thought was you could see a point where all of a sudden, like it felt like in that first round towards the end, Conor was the superior striker, but then Dustin just like turned on this confidence again, like pointing to him like Diaz like. And from there, I was like, "Oh, he knows something I don't know." As a viewer, you know.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people focused on Michael Chandler's wrestling, but I mean, you know, in many of his fights, like he has displayed that power as well, and that's like a huge part of his game as well. And I mean, he was able to make this adjustment seamlessly, and I was looking at it as well. Like we saw the Benson Henderson fight in August, and then prior to that, he had fought in December of 2019. But you just look at, you know, facing a guy the level of Dan Hooker, he's 34 now. What was like? This is a speed division as well. All those factors. I mean, that did not really preclude him at all from being able to be the aggressor in this fight and showcase that power. So there's going to be a lot of interest in his next fight, and it could be as big as fighting for the championship next. He gave the best audition possible tonight for the UFC lightweight mix.
Yeah, I think so. I think he turned it on the right night, and yeah, that momentum could actually lead him like to getting a bit of a leap over a guy like Oliveira. Yeah.
Yeah, at worst, he's getting a top 5 guy next. At worst, probably a top 3 guy. So he's going to be in like a very short path to getting to a title fight, unless there's, you know, mitigating factors. Like he has positioned himself very well.
Most definitely, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks very much for the call.
Thank you very much, Stepite. All right, so next we are going to Malaysia, maybe?
Oh, wow.
Is this Ferris from Malaysia? Are you actually in Malaysia, Ferris? You are on the air.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ferris.
Okay.
Are you actually in Malaysia?
Yeah, I'm from Malaysia.
Excellent. Welcome.
Okay. Yeah. Watching this from 8 in the morning here up until now. It's like 3 noon, past noon. Thoughts about the fight. What performance from Dustin Diamond Poirier? Like really solid performance from him. For me, it should have been for the lightweight title in hindsight, really, because you know Khabib non-committed to for another title fight. So I do think that it should have been promoted as a title fight in advance. I mean, Khabib can go retire, and then maybe if he's injured, he can actually just come back and go for the title again. What do you guys think?
In terms of like Khabib, you're saying he shouldn't vacate the title?
I think he was just saying that this fight should have been this fight in hindsight should be for the title. Yeah.
In hindsight should be for the title, because I mean, if you think about it, the numbers might gone a lot more than it is.
I think I don't disagree that, you know, I think that was the UFC's call. Like Khabib said, I'm retired. And the UFC, like, look how fast they moved on Henry Cejudo when he announced his retirement. That title was up for grabs immediately. So I think that was the UFC believing, or at least I should say Dana White believing, he's not stripping Khabib of the title as long as there's a glimmer of hope that he can promote that rematch with Conor McGregor. And I think that was the whole calculus behind not stripping him of the title, because tonight's fight, it very well could have been a championship fight and would have added that much more stakes to tonight. So I don't disagree, but I don't think you can blame Khabib for that, because that's a UFC call to strip him of the title.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and also another thing is it makes the path clearer for the next matchup, like maybe Joe Brown's fighting for the title, or maybe Chandler with Kichi maybe for the next who is the next in line. I mean, it's just with Khabib now in this position right now of wanting to go in or not. It's kind of muddled the division a bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. As those are like the four, key lightweights to watch, and I would say it's Dustin Poirier and whoever the challenger is, and I would say the short list there is Oliveira and Chandler. I just see Gaethje as probably needing a win before he's like thrust into a title scenario. But you of just those names alone, not to mention Conor McGregor and Paul Felder. I mean, you have a long list of lightweights that you could make some incredible fights that will take you throughout this year and into next, if everyone stays healthy.
Yeah, agree.
All right, thank you.
I think that's what it for me.
All right, thank you very much for the call, Ferris. Thank you for joining us, and we have one last set of callers.
All right.
A set of callers. These two had to be together. Why don't we say hello, Eric Marcotte and Brandon from New Jersey? Hi, guys.
Oh, wow. Hi, Brandon.
You're on the air, guys.
Hi, John. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Eric.
Hey.
Okay, Brandon's disappeared. Eric, what'd you think of the card tonight?
Wow, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, I'll admit, as you can see from scrolling through the MMA section of the Discord, I didn't do very well in my predictions, but that often makes.
I would have done horrible tonight if I had made predictions. I would have totally whiffed on the Amanda Ribas fight and the top two fights. I definitely would have got those ones wrong.
Oh, I will say I think people were sleeping a bit on Marina Rodriguez. She's looked very solid. I thought she beat Carla Esparza in her last fight, so it was a bit reaffirming to see her get the win. But I mean, tonight belongs to Dustin Poirier. This is one of the biggest cards I can recall in terms of the interest, just all over. You can always feel it. You can always feel when the interest is at a high level, and it was for this card. And Dustin Poirier ruled the day, as did Michael Chandler. 2 fights I thought were going to go the other way, but career-defining wins for both of them.
So what do you see in terms of Conor McGregor's year? Okay, if he is willing to fight, what do you see as the options for him?
I think the option that everybody is going to immediately turn to is Nate Diaz. I mean, Nate has expressed interest in fighting, I believe, if my memory is serving me correct recently. That's a logical fight right now. I don't think lightweight. Yes, at lightweights, although it wouldn't shock me if it happened at welterweights. I also think, even though I don't know if this is the most likely fight to be made, but Conor McGregor against Dan Hooker would also make a lot of sense. That's a fight stylistically I'd love to see. But with a name like Conor McGregor, there are no shortage of options.
Yeah, we haven't brought up the name Nate Diaz, but that one would make a lot of sense to go at this point and do that fight. I could see that being the fight that would... Because I just see Conor looking for what is going to be the biggest fight that I can be part of. And I think Nate Diaz would qualify as one of those fights. More so than a Dan Hooker.
Yeah, that's why I think, especially online, you're seeing a lot of the general, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but like the discourse is swaying towards Nate Diaz. And I think that's very logical from the UFC's perspective.
Mm-hmm. And Brandon, what about you? What do you have to say?
You guys in a while. How are you?
He's tired of all these podcasts that he has to listen to. So he's busy catching up on everything. Any other thoughts, Eric, tonight? Anything from the outside of the big 2 fights? Any big performances? That
wait, hold on, John. Can you not hear Brandon?
I can't hear him at all.
Oh, I can hear Brandon. Yeah,
you might have him on his volume down, but we can hear.
Don't
Brandon.
Change anything. This is perfect. I can't hear him at all.
Okay, well, I'll have the conversation with Brandon after Eric answers the question about anything else that stood out.
I mean, those 3 fights, the ones that we already talked about, are the ones that immediately come to mind. Jojo Calderwood, I think you have to look at this as a huge victory for her career-wise. To lose this one to Jessica I would be a big, especially after losing that last fight too, where she was a fight away from a title fight. I think she's reasserted herself in that title picture. Jessica I less so, but this was maybe the biggest one of her career. I don't think that's saying anything crazy.
I don't think that's crazy at all. All right. Well, thanks, Eric, for joining us. Brandon, I'm sorry that John can't hear you. I think he's just in the habit of immediately muting you whenever he joins a new social media platform. Did you enjoy the card?
I thought it was fun. The two fights delivered. I would love to see Poirier fight Oliveira, man. I think that would be an absolutely entertaining fight. I guess Oliveira would probably be next for Chandler. Would you do that fight?
I mean, I think John and I talked about it earlier. We both agreed that Oliveira versus Poirier is a great fight that we would like to see. And Oliveira certainly deserves it. But we sort of feel like maybe Chandler's more likely to get put into that title fight right away just because of the magnitude of the win, the platform. It was such a big moment. It seems logical in a lot of ways to go Poirier Chandler next, even though that sounds tragic for Oliveira.
I feel like he's getting slept on in the division. He's on such a run right now, the Bronx. But I guess that's just me. And I like that Evloev guy. I guess you haven't talked about him yet on the undercard against Nick Lentz.
We will get to that. Yeah. So to fill John in, Brandon's praising Movsar Evloev, who we will talk about. I mean, I knew we would get to Nick Lentz eventually. It was inevitable. Yeah, he looked pretty good, and we will get to that fight in a second. Is there anything else, Brandon, that you want to share about the night?
Oh, no, that's it. I enjoyed the coverage, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
You better be on 2K tonight, Brandon.
All right, yeah, them's fighting words by get them sticks up, guys. Get them sticks up. Okay, all right. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, everybody who called in. On with the show.
Well, let's quickly just go through the prelim card here. We won't spend too much time on this. Arman Tsarukyan defeated Matt Frevola by unanimous decision. Tsarukyan, he had missed weight, so he was docked 20% of his purse. And this was the fight where Matt Frevola was supposed to take on Ottman Azaitar, who was fired by the UFC on Friday after it was discovered that him and his team had given up their wristbands and allowed people outside of the safe zone to go into the safe zone in Abu Dhabi. And it led to these two fights being juggled because Tsarukyan's original opponent, Nasrat Haqparast, he fell ill and could not weigh in. But with these both being lightweight fights, they paired the two ends together. So these guys got this fight on 24 hours notice. Tsarukyan, I thought, looked really good in this fight. I had him winning all 3 rounds. But this was a fun fight. Like, Frevola was scrambling throughout this. Tsarukyan was threatening with various submissions. In the second, he tried for a darce, an arm triangle, ended up getting 10 of 12 takedowns in this fight. And I thought a very good performance from him, and that much more impressive given the fact that this was an opponent that these two were paired together on a day's notice.
Yeah, I'm very high in Tsarukyan. Obviously, missing weight is not good, but he's very young and he's made weight in the past. So curious to understand what happened here. I'm really high in Tsarukyan. His only loss in the UFC was to Islam Makhachev. I believe that was a short notice fight. It was a super competitive fight. I've got a feeling a couple years we're going to see a rematch between those two guys when they're both in the top 5. And I'm really looking forward to that. Tsarukyan, really good. Frevola, he put up a game fight, but by the end of it, Tsarukyan just was too much for him. Feel bad for Frevola not getting the type of fight he, prepared for. But hats off to Tsarukyan. He's one to watch.
Yeah, and he's only 24 years old. Definitely a lightweight to keep your eyes on. Brad Tavares defeated Antônio Carlos Júnior by unanimous decision. The scores were 30-27 twice and 29-28. I had Tavares winning 2 and 3, and I gave Carlos Jr. the first. It was a fairly close round, but What was very impressive in this fight was the takedown defense of Brad Tavares, who was coming off a torn ACL. And you don't get awarded points for takedown defense, but nonetheless, I thought this was a sizable part of Carlos Jr.'s game plan, and Tavares stopped him in very impressive fashion. He stopped 10 of 11 takedown attempts in this fight, and then contesting this on the feet, was able to utilize his right hand significantly and earn the decision.
Yeah, you summarized it perfectly. Carlos Jr. was going after the takedown aggressively throughout much of this fight. In the first round in particular, all Tavares could do was defend. And so he was doing that impressively, but as you already stated, you don't get points for that. So that's why I also gave Carlos the round. But after that, he started to piece him up. He really took control in the striking and got a very strong win.
Julianna Peña, as we talked about earlier, she defeated Sara McMann with a rear naked choke, 3:39 of the third round. McMann won the first round. The second was very close. I leaned towards Peña mainly because of the striking output she landed at the end of the round. And then in the third, she didn't leave it up to the judges because she slammed McMann to the ground, got side control, hit her with hammer fists, and then was able to get the back, sunk in her hooks, and then got a rear naked choke on Sara McMann, who tapped out at 3:39. As we mentioned, for Peña, she cut a promo on Amanda Nunes after for ducking her, and I think puts herself in a great position because they are in a dire search for contenders at 135. So I think Julianna Peña did herself a service here by calling out Amanda Nunes. And you have to wonder, Phil, with Sara McMann, she is now 40 years old. She has a 500 record in the UFC. She had her title fight so early in her UFC career that you have to wonder, like, what is the longevity for Sara McMann as a active fighter?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough to say because she is still improving in some regards, and they made note of that during the broadcast. Like it's not all bad news for her, but in this fight, she was doing well early, and it slowly progressed worse and worse. And like you said, being at age 40, even though it's a pretty thin division, the amount of wins that she needs to get back in the thick of things, it is difficult to imagine what she's gonna. You can't really see her ever contending again.
And then the televised prelims opened up with Marcin Prachnio defeating Khalil Rountree Jr. I had Prachnio winning rounds 1 and 3, Rountree winning the second. I guess there were some that were debating if Rountree won this fight. How did you score the fight?
I did score this one for Rountree. I gave him the first and the second, but they were close. Like it was all close. Yeah. So I didn't have a problem with the decision.
And the early prelims, Movsar Evloev defeated Nick Lentz by split decision, and Amir Albazi defeated Zhalgas Zhumagulov by unanimous decision. I did not see the early prelims, but you can go back to Fight Pass if you want to catch up on these particular fights. Nothing to add, Phil.
I mean, I practiced saying Zhumagulov several times, so I'm going to say it, Zhumagulov.
Well, looking ahead, the UFC is off next weekend. They come back February the 6th, the night before the Super Bowl. That's got Alistair Overeem against Alexander Volkov. And then I guess you and I, Phil, are going to be back in 3 weeks because we got another pay-per-view coming up. And it's kind of a sneaky good pay-per-view card. They outline the main card tonight. This is the Kamaru Usman-Gilbert Burns fight. This will be third time's the charm to put this fight together after it fell apart twice last year. But the main card also has Chris Weidman versus Uriah Hall. Macy Barber is back after a setback in 2020 against Alexa Grasso. Kelvin Gastelum against Ian Heinisch. And Jimmy Rivera against Pedro Munoz is your 5-fight main card, which I think is like a pretty good pay-per-view card.
Yeah,
this isn't going to be like the level of interest that we're coming off of tonight, but this is not a bad card at all.
No, it's not a bad card at all. Definitely solid 5 fights, very significant in all their divisions. Interesting to see what type of, I mean, this is essentially how big of a draw is Usman, right? Usman's coming off of a massive fight with Jorge Masvidal. People have critiqued his style in the past. And so we'll see how much of the viewership from that previous fight is going to translate into this one.
And then some notes that they've recently mentioned. They, of course, the next, I would say, big pay-per-view is UFC 259, which has 3 title fights on it. We've got Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya for the light heavyweight championship. Amanda Nunes will defend her featherweight championship against Megan Anderson. And then Piotr Jan versus Aljamain Sterling for the bantamweight title. And they announced officially, this was reported by ESPN, but made official on the broadcast, that it will be Stipe Miocic, Francis Ngannou on March the 27th, the same night they're doing the Brian Ortega fight, where he will be challenging, oh God, why am I blanking on this? Alexander Volkanovski for the featherweight title.
And they also announced, I believe, Tyrone Woodley versus Vicente Luque on that card as well.
Yeah, so you got like quite a lot of big fights this first quarter of the year.
Yeah, it's they
like
really
pay-per-views. There's some big fights coming our way in the coming months. So there you go. If you're what a time to increase the pay-per-view price in the US with all these fights coming up.
Supply and demand.
Market and forces. The last thing, performance of the night bonuses tonight were Dustin Poirier, Mahmoud Muradov, Marina Rodriguez, and Michael Chandler. 4 performance of the night bonuses handed out. And the 5th one goes to you, Phil, just for manning the ship tonight. You get the post performance of the night bonus. We're not sending you $50,000, but we're all going to send you 50,000 thank yous after tonight.
All you don't even need to send me that. But what you could send me is you could send me an animated GIF in the Post Wrestling Discord. If you have not joined the Post Wrestling Discord, why don't you do that? We have a great time. We don't just talk about MMA. We don't just talk about pro wrestling. We talk about movies, music, comics. We share pictures of our delicious lunch. Don't you want to know what Brandon has for breakfast? It's incredible. So come join us in the Post Wrestling Discord. Occasionally we get some, stop-ins from Wei Ting. I'm hoping John's going to make a few more appearances in the Post Wrestling Discord.
You never know. You never know when I'm gonna show up. I'm like the mysterious person in the background. It was very hard. I wanted to try and be in there more tonight. It's very difficult doing the website stuff with the notes and everything. But
it's okay. John. It doesn't have to be during an event. It could just be, instead of, before bedtime. I know you're reading lots of books, but instead of doom scrolling Twitter, come join your fellow.
I'll doom scroll here. Yeah, I'll doom scroll Brandon from New Jersey's day and see what's going on there. All right. Well, at that note, at 2:14 a.m., we are going to sign off. I want to thank all the calls tonight. That was great to hear from so many people. And for all of you downloading the show, checking this out, however you do so, we are here live after every UFC pay-per-view. Subscribe at youtube.com/postwrestling. And for the love of God, go join the Post Wrestling Discord with this man, the Lord of the Cord, Phil Chertok. You can go to postwrestling.com, click on Discord. You'll never leave.
That's a lot of sales pitch.
On that note, goodbye, everybody. We'll chat in 3 weeks after Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns. Everyone, a round of applause for Phil Chertok. That is it. Thank you for listening to the UFC 257 Post Show.